It's time to raise hell with them.
News and in-depth analysis from
I would like to give a special shout out to Mr. Abrams of Abrams Heating and Air, who just tweeted out, Erick Erickson is right. Pearl Jam, best band ever. Yes, see, I'm right. You should listen to me. Oh, aren't they fantastic? All right. I got to move. So Apple is announcing its new operating system. We're going from Big Sur to Monterey. I can't wait for like Apple OS Compton, where your computer like robs you. I think it would be fantastic. I mean, that's what they're doing. Let's be honest with it. They're nickel and diming us on everything. So you download Apple OS Compton, and I mean, you're suddenly like out of money. Get in trouble for that, aren't I? I mean, let's keep it real here. Apple OS San Francisco, your computer suddenly smells like poop, and you bang on the keyboard and get stabbed with a heroin needle. Or Apple OS San Francisco, and the icon is a tit village of homeless people. And then when you start laughing, you can't laugh. You're not the right race. It would be fantastic. But I digress, don't I? Have y'all heard what Matt Walsh did? Matt Walsh used to be on radio. He's now a blogger, writer, columnist over at the Daily Wire. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went on a tirade on social media about her grandmother in Puerto Rico, was left impoverished by a hurricane, that hurricane from a few years ago, and the Trump administration's poor responses just left her bad off. So Matt Walsh decided to fundraise for her grandmother and raised $100,000 for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's grandmother. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, keep in mind, has a Tesla, lives in a very fancy apartment complex in Washington, D.C., and Matt Walsh is apparently the bad guy. The Independent, which is a left-wing paper in Great Britain, says right-wing blogger launches GoFundMe for AOC's Puerto Rico grandmother in latest personal attack. He's literally helping her grandmother to the tune of six figures. If Matt Walsh wants to raise me $100,000, I will gladly use it and put myself in a very nice office somewhere. If he wants to fundraise for me and buy me an office. But nope, he wanted to help her grandmother. And somehow it's a personal attack on AOC. Actually, what it is he is pointing out that she's not a very generous person to her grandmother. She would rather use her grandmother's property. And by the way, there is ample data out there across the board showing that conservatives are more charitable than progressives, and in particular, those damn Christians. My gosh, those people tend to be generous. I mean, those people tend to give money when they can ill afford to give the money. Those Christians, they want everybody else to have their money. They are the most charitable people on planet Earth. They're more charitable than Muslims, Jews, Zoroastrians, Buddhists. The Christians tend to be the most charitable, maybe because their Lord and Savior commands them to be so. So Matt Walsh gets a bunch of people to give $100,000 to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's grandmother to help her, given the tragedy on her property due to that hurricane from years ago. And he is somehow the bad guy here. He is somehow the bad guy for helping an elderly lady in Puerto Rico when her grandkid would not help. No, all he's done is he's exposed the hypocrisy of the left. They like to have the issue. They don't actually want to solve the problem. Y'all, I was not going to talk about this. Is this for real? Hang on a second. You know, I pride myself on trying to be down with the truth here. Use of internal morality. Just wait a second. Oh dear God. It's true. Y'all, it is 2021. The President of the United States has now submitted in writing his budget plan to Congress. And they have substituted the word birthing person for mother. I was not actually going to talk about this, but here it is. My buddy Erick Erickson has just noted this. He works for Josh Hawley. He's the legislative director for Josh Hawley. The funny thing is that they've kept the word maternal. So here is one of his fundraising or one of the presidencies. I'm reading you from the actual budget from the President of the United States. The United States is the highest maternal mortality rate among developed nations, with an unacceptably high mortality rate for Black, American Indian, Alaska Native, and other women of color. To help end this high rate of maternal mortality and race-based disparities in outcomes among birthing people. Birthing person. The Democrats are actually going with this. A birthing person. The Democrats are actually going to embrace birthing people as a phrase. Can I get James Carville on the line? This is insanity that the Democrats have decided they're actually going to go down this road and alienate mothers. By the way, the Supreme Court has decided they're not going to take the case. The Supreme Court decided they're not going to take the case to allow women to be drafted. You know, this is the new thing. The Democrats, in the name of equality, want women to be drafted. A group of men sued to insist that women be drafted. A unanimous Supreme Court not only rejected it, but three of them, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Sonia Sotomayor, signed on to a statement saying Congress gets to pick. This isn't for the court. Now, it was a group of men who decided to do it, but it was the women's feminist groups that signed on with them and said, yes, women should be drafted. Do you really want your daughter to be drafted? Women, do you want to be drafted into the war with China that's coming? Do you? Now, I highlight all this. This is what I was going to talk about. The New York Times, I don't know. So I don't know who advertises on Twitter. Twitter advertisements are garbage. And I tend to, like on Instagram, I have found a variety of fantastic products and companies to support on Instagram. One of my favorite companies, clothing companies actually, is called Rhone, Rhone. They make fantastic gym wear. Guys, if you're looking for gym shorts, I can tell you Rhone makes the best ones. They're way better than Lululemon, way better. And the insides don't wear out. Rhone, Rhone. I'm telling you, they would never let me be a brand ambassador because I'm fat, not athletic, and conservative. But I will endorse them without getting paid. Rhone makes fantastic. In fact, the pants I've got on right now, I'm wearing an Under Armour polo shirt, but their pants are fantastic. Their underwear is fantastic. Their gym clothes are incredible. There are all sorts of companies out there now that sell them, like 10,000, Legends, on it goes. There are a million different men's apparel companies now for gym clothes. Rhone, hands down, the best. And I discovered them through Instagram, and now I've gotten to know the CEO a little bit as well. Very nice guy. I would have never discovered him except from Instagram, and that's why I allow Instagram to invade my privacy even now on the Apple iOS updates, because I find, like, for example, There's a company in Virginia that makes hand-hammered cast iron pans and knives, and I discovered them through Instagram, and I've ordered from them. I have a Japanese knife, chef's knife. That sucker, I swear to you, it would cut through steel. It is the sharpest object in my house. You look at it and you bleed. It's so sharp. And I discovered that company. I can't remember the name of the company. It's some small company out in Washington State that hand hammers, makes these carbon steel blades. And it's incredible. It is a gorgeous knife. It was expensive, but that sucker, I don't know that I'll ever have to sharpen it. It is the sharpest object I have ever owned in my life. And I have owned a series of European chef's knives. This thing is incredible. I literally, it's like the thing on TV. I can use just a tomato, a soft tomato. And I just, I mean, I can slice this thing paper thin. It's incredible. If you're not careful, you'll slice it off your finger. But I discovered it from Instagram. On Twitter, the ads are just garbage on Twitter. Like, for example, I have seen this ad repeatedly, the New York Times promoted story. This is the headline of the New York Times promoted story that is targeting me, a heterosexual married father of two who lives in the South and goes to seminary. Women who said no to motherhood. A photographer in Berlin is capturing the lives of the consciously child-free. Zoe Noble was 32 when her doctor told her the clock is ticking. The hysterectomy Ms. Noble needed to remove a fibroid was not up for discussion so far as her doctor was concerned, despite the fact she didn't want children. It took years of pain and an emergency room visit before she was finally granted the surgery at 37. The practice of a physician denying a patient surgery on the assumption that a woman will change her mind about wanting children is common. It's as though a woman's purpose in life is to have children. Oh, good Lord. Ms. Noble, a British photographer who lives in Berlin, said, recounting a 2016 encounter with a taxi driver in Berlin, a haven for alternative family structures, when the driver nearly drove off the road after he discovered she was married without children. Have one, and by the second or third, you'll like it, he told her. Oh, good grief. So she goes around and wants to take pictures of the consciously childless. I don't care if you want to be consciously childless, but I will care if you decide that later in life my taxes need to go up to bail you out because you have no family to take care of you, and so you're stuck in an old folks' home. Childless. This reminds me of something I wanted to talk about earlier. It plays in perfectly well with this. You're not supposed to talk about this. Do you know? So Brad Wilcox is fantastic. You should follow him on Twitter, Brad Wilcox IFS. He is a professor. He's the director of the National Marriage Project at the University of Virginia. Do you know? You probably don't know if you've internalized critical theory. But here's a factoid you probably haven't heard of, and you should. A black child who lives in a two-parent heterosexual nuclear household. In other words, a black child who has a mother and a father in the house will academically and economically outperform a white child from a single-parent household. I bet you didn't know that. I didn't know that. I keep up with this stuff. But the data is now out there. The studies have been done, and they all agree. And it is a variety and multitude of studies, and they all show the same thing. And it is something you would never hear in the media. You certainly won't hear from the critical theorists who believe that if you're black, you're always going to be oppressed. A black child in the United States who has a mom and dad at home will academically and economically outperform a white kid from a single-parent home. And guess what? There's more data out there. Young married couples now earn more than singles, individually and collectively, and they're much higher. The message to 20-somethings right now is that careers should take priority over finding someone to marry and taking priority over family. You've got the New York Times doing profiles of women who choose not to have children, but there's actually no evidence. The evidence now actually shows that if you are a young person who is married, you not only earn more money than your single person friend, with few exceptions, but you will continue to earn more money individually and as a household. There is actually almost no, pay attention to this one, in a day and age where everyone says that men out earn women and there's this huge gender gap in pay. Actually, married young men and married young women are now at pay parity. It's the singles who are not. Do you know why this is? When you dive into the studies, there are a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons why is because if you are young and married, you are presumed to be more stable in life than a young single person. If you are young and married and you apply for a job, the employer is more likely to view you as hanging out and making a go of it with the company than a young single person who on a whim will say, you know what, I think I want to move to California, parasail, and smoke a lot of weed instead of doing this job. Not a bad choice, honestly, but I mean, if you're young and married, you're not going to do that. You're young and married, you're in, let's say, I don't know, let's say Atlanta, because that's where I'm being broadcast from. You're in Atlanta, Georgia, and you're young and you're married. Your employer is going to want to invest in you because the employer looks at you and says, this person's not going to pack up and move overnight because they've laid down roots here. And so that person, that young married couple, is going to make more money than their young single counterparts. Now, there are exceptions to this. Philip, who works for me, has a friend who's in sales, medical device sales, is making like super high six figures as a single person. But that's actually the anomaly. That's the exception to the rule. The rule now is that young married people make more. The rule is that a black kid in a two-parent household is going to do better in life than a white kid in a single-parent household. This is what all the data says. And yet society, culturally, society these days suggests the opposite. These days you are incentivized to not get married. The advertisers don't want you to get married. The cultural elite don't want you to get married. They downplay marriage, or let's marry them until we fall out of love, and then we're going to get a divorce, and we're going to have a new house. Marriage has nothing to do with happiness. You understand? Happiness is a byproduct of marriage. It's not the reason to get married. Happiness comes through the marriage as you each submit to each other and become one entity.
Eden pure.
But it is a reality. The data shows us that getting married and staying married, in fact, the data shows us graduate from high school and then get married and then have kids, those people tend to do best in life. And those who stay married tend to do better than everyone else. And their kids do better than everyone else. Is it not weird? You can almost see the devil himself at the work in the world, that the way the culture, the way society values life is exactly the opposite of how to raise a stable person and make them a productive member of society. The world tells you have as much sex as you want, don't ever get married, and don't worry about having kids. And the data actually shows that those are the most miserable people, most likely to commit suicide, who earn the least amount of money. The data actually shows the people who get married young, stay married, have kids after they get married and get a job, make the most money, have the most stable families, live the longest, and are the happiest. But the world would tell you otherwise, and that is really one of the problems we're dealing with as a society now. You know, one of the other problems I'm dealing with in society is my allergies. I've had a sneezing fit. If my voice sounds a little different now than it did in the last half hour, it's because at the bottom of the hour, I had a nasty sneezing fit, and I didn't have the Eden Pure turned on in the office that I should have. The Eden Pure is a small portable air purifier, and it's filterless, which is fantastic. You hold it in your hand. You can actually get $10 off their lowest sale price right now if you go to EdenPureDeals.com. Eden, like the Garden of Eden, pure as the driven snow, deals.com. EdenPureDeals.com. It generates ozone. It wipes out odors. It gets rid of the pollen. It gets rid of the mold, the mildew, the bacteria. In fact, it is guaranteed to kill and prevent the spread of mold, mildew, and fungus, including black mold. This thing is so convenient. We've got a couple of them in our house now. We can travel with them. You can put them in your car. It eliminates odors. You get a stinky rental car. You put it in there. It takes care of it for you. You cook in the kitchen. You don't have an exhaust fan. It'll take care of it for you. Eden Pure, they are fantastic. They are small. They're portable. You don't have to change filters. EdenPureDeals.com. What you'll do if you go to EdenPureDeals.com, you'll see my name on the website. Click it, click my name. And then when you check out, you'll see a discount code and put my name in there, ERICK. You'll get $10 off the lowest sale price. You will get yourself a great air purifier, EdenPureDeals.com.
Erick Erickson gives you the information you
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. It is my show. This just now breaking. This afternoon, U.S. investigators have recovered millions of dollars in cryptocurrency paid in ransom to hackers whose attack prompted the shutdown of the key East Coast pipeline last month. According to people briefed in the matter, this from CNN reporting right now, the Justice Department on Monday is expected to announce details of the operation led by the FBI with the cooperation of the Colonial Pipeline operator. People briefed on the matter said. The ransom recovery is a rare outcome for a company that has fallen victim to a debilitating cyber attack. In the booming criminal business of ransomware, Colonial Pipeline Company CEO Joseph Blunt told the Wall Street Journal in an interview the company complied with the $4.4 million ransom demand because they didn't know the extent of the intrusion by hackers, but behind the scenes, they had already notified the FBI and followed instructions to help investigators track the payment to a cryptocurrency wallet used by the hackers believed to be in Russia. Now, that goes with a clip. I want to play this from Roy Blunt, the senator from Missouri.
On one question you asked Chairman Warner, could we say that companies have to guarantee their system to be a U.S. vendor or whatever the other guarantee might be? The truth is we haven't been able to guarantee our own system. You know, on the solar winds, they got in the government system as well. We didn't know they were there. Right. We don't know how long they were there. We're not absolutely sure they're not there still. And so, you know, saying that companies would have to meet a standard we can't meet would be one thing. And let me make one other point. On the Colonial Pipeline, it was a very simple way in. They used an old account that was no longer even a person who that account was not even part of the system anymore, but it wasn't taken out of the system. There was a place where maybe a two-part authentication would made a big difference. We've worked hard on this both in Intel and in the Republican Policy Committee, trying to alert companies, but also our own colleagues of how broad the danger could be here. And I'm glad this is getting the attention it's now finally getting. It took gasoline and beef.
Well, that's right. And
for us to think this is really a serious problem.
That's right. No,
I love this. It was an old account that hadn't been deleted, and it didn't have two-factor authentication. So, you know, I mean, people's names and passwords. So I'm in the Apple universe, and Apple now, when you sign up for websites, can suggest a random long password for you for that website. And I'm stunned by the number of websites that won't let me use the Apple password because they want something that's 8 characters and has different punctuation symbols and the like, when the Apple one is far more aggressive. And they won't do it. It's absurd that these companies are not letting me have an even tougher password. And a lot of people use the same password over and over, and I have in the past, and one of mine got exposed, actually. And so I've had to go through and start changing passwords for everything. And I've got different passwords all over, and two-factor authentication. So when someone tries to log into, for example, my Google account or an Instagram account, I get a text message in an authentication app saying, "Is this you?" and a random digits to put in. A lot of people don't do that. In Colonial Pipeline, apparently, it was an old password. People got to do better. Do better. Two-factor authentication and random passwords and shut down accounts.